Poetry slam champion, visual artist, performer, teacher, spoken word artist, and YouTube sensation. Winona Lynn has been making a name for herself in literary circles throughout her home country of Canada and more recently in Paris, France, where she now makes her home. Last Sunday, Winona headlined the storytelling performance at the San Miguel Writers Conference. Were some of you there?
Yes.
Yes? Show hands?
Oh, yeah.
That was, I think, the very best storytelling performance we've had in town. It was amazing. And we've had plenty of good ones. Originally from Kingston, Ontario, Winona made her mark in the thriving poetry community of Halifax, Nova Scotia, while attending the University of King's College. She is a regular writer and performer in the Paris literary and spoken word scenes. She is the director of Paris Lit Up Slam series and is in the process of publishing her fourth book, a graphic novel. Please welcome Winona Lynn.
I have this dream where we meet at Starbucks. And you have Dylan Thomas quotes in masking tape on the back of your laptop, so in my head, I call you Dylan Thomas quotes on laptop, and out loud you call me Beth. Even though my name isn't Beth. But it makes sense that you call me Beth because in my dream you have myopia and wear sexy glasses and you misread the joke I wrote on my name tag. The name tag left over from the writers' conference I was attending, and we meet at Starbucks. And we're only there because our favorite cafes are closed. We would never be in a Starbucks if there was any other option. We're too in tune with the zeitgeist for that. And I say, hi, Dylan Thomas laptop quotes, and you say, hi, go away, I'm working. No, wait, that's it, you're working. I forgot the dream again. You work at Starbucks. I have this dream where we meet at Starbucks and I walk in because my favorite cafe is closed, and you work at Starbucks to supplement your income as a musician in a band that isn't going anywhere yet. Even though that band is super hopeful. But you're less hopeful and more realist than they are. You just love making music, which is great, because when we move in together, you'll be working all the time while me, your slacker poet girlfriend, stays at home and watches Netflix and does romantic things like writes you poetry in your morning Cheerios. I mean alphabets. Cheerios are all O's. It would be very hard to write poems out of Cheerios. Ooh, they would all go like this. Ooh. And in my dream, your band is a folksy garage hipster thing like every other band. And it has an ironic name, and you sing and play the upright bass, but when we meet, you tell me that you play the bass guitar. When I ask you 9 years later, on the night of the day that we adopt one of Angelina Jolie's children, just so we can have someone new to talk to, why you lied to me. That first morning across the espresso machine, you tell me that bass guitars are the sexiest instrument that someone can play, and you wanted me to think you were sexy. Which I immediately did. Because of your hair and your voice and the milk phone clinging to your wrists. I totally disagree with your stance on instruments, though. Having complete mastery over something 3 times your size is definitely the way to my heart. That's not innuendo. I don't have anything that large, and most nights the dream continues. Some nights it's about you. Some nights it's about Marissa Tomei in that catsuit from My Cousin Vinny. Some nights it's about the 2 of you together, and I don't want to get into that because it gets pretty weird. And usually after, we end up talking about your sister's love life and arguing over the pronunciation of Réaumur Sebastopol, and then we eat oranges off the tip of my penknife and wonder how you ever found that incredible apartment just down the street from the Cheesecake Bakery. I have this dream where we meet at Starbucks. And it's so much better than my recurring nightmare where I disappoint the X-Men and Wolverine says, fuck no, you're not flying the plane. And as you're making my drink, at Starbucks that is, I say, I know you, shuddering brunette. Shaking your curls over everyone else's shoulders, you have taped Dylan Thomas to the back of your laptop and the inside of your heart. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. What a peculiar choice for someone like you. Not that Thomas is in any way out of your reach. I believe you splash in desperation like the rest of us. Maybe you too hear doom slinking up the back stairs to smother you in your minimalist kitchen, but honey, Ginsberg suits you better. With his ecstasy and sunflowers and sweet boy, gimme your ass. No, you will never go gentle into that goodnight bright beacon. You make your own sun. I have this dream where we meet at the end of the world. And although it's hard to see colors clearly through the swarming of parasites, I think I can make out the outline of a mermaid, so I assume you just got off shift. And as your hair smells like sweat and burnt coffee substitute, my assumption is probably correct. I tell you that the state-mandated combination Geiger counter and fallout shield look simply charming on you, and you tell me that you like the Dylan Thomas quotes I embroidered into my lead-lined mittens. And we're so lost in each other's eyes that when the sirens warn that the 3 p.m. acid rainfall will be heavier than usual, we forget to deploy our protective umbrellas. And we're having such a good time that we don't remember to activate the biomesh on our suits and even think it's kind of cute when a space eel bites off the tip of your nose. And you're telling such great stories from that semester you spent on Vega that neither one of us notices how corroded we've become, or how rubbery our bones feel, or how many limbs we've lost. And as my arms fall off, I feel sad that I'll never be able to touch you. And as your lips fuse together, you finally remember my name. And as we dissolve into a puddle, our consciousnesses meld, and I think, well, isn't this something? Melting away at the end of the world, and you think, yeah, it's pretty sad. I would have loved to scuba dive the Rockies with you, but if I have to die in a puddle outside a Starbucks, I couldn't ask for it to be with anyone better. We had a good run, and I do like your poems, and as we slip down a drain with the rest of the trash, I sigh and think, God, you looked good in those jeans. There are winds in France that make you lose your mind. North winds so strong they burst your eardrums. What? North winds so strong they burst your eardrums, so don't go to Provence at the end of the summer if you're keen to keep your head. But what if the storms are already inside? What if you were born with tornadoes coming out of your ears, Looney Tunes style? There's no way that's healthy. What do you do if you aren't from here and are made of different stuff? How do you write the wind? Not quite Tornado Alley. Southern Ontario tries its best, but if Dorothy landed where I was born, I'm sure she'd feel at home. Purple lightning summers, water spouts on the lake, no swimming, they'll suck you up in July. Fish rain, zebra mussels fall from the sky, hold out a basket. Seafood lunch. When I was young, I could control the weather, because I read a lot of comics, and Storm was born in Harlem, and I was raised in Queens, and I have green eyes, so I'm a mutant too, close enough for cloud music. It always started to pour when my tears did, accidentally cloud seeding, cause and effect, salt affects weather. I was born in a blizzard. It's been raining all my life, but the only hurricanes of Lake Ontario are the ones in your head, dizzy, so dizzy it just keeps spinning. Shh. There's snow on the back porch. Shh, just knocked down the wind chimes. Did it break the glass? Is it inside? Has the storm come through the screen? Let it try. I have no fear of lightning to those who shudder in the wind and ask where the chill comes from. It comes from me. With every step, shuffle step, I am the conductive steel you hold at a distance. I am Ben Franklin's key. I am the lightning rod on your roof. I am static electricity. I am no swimming in a storm. I am get out of the river now. I am the dry winter air that frizzes your hair. I am the balloon that sticks to the wall. I am wintergreen lifesavers, crackling sparks on your molars. I am firefly, glowworm, electric eel. I am the fox that catches voles by sensing magnetic poles. I am the snakes that slither starward when my left foot strikes the ground. I am all around. I am not from here. I was born Mezatawi, universe, whole, and since that day I have swallowed the universe. I breathe, and I remember its power in me, and I remember its power in you, synaptic leap sending ions skittering through, and Thunderbird claps his wings together, and Lena is still singing stormy weather. I came to this place, shaking ice off my feathers. I am a wind in human skin. Feel me. I am Chikwewa, thunder being, Mezatawi, whole, and there are Great Lake storms I am known to control. Edmund Fitzgerald is a friend of mine. I've been lost before, north of 49, and there are winds in France that make you lose your mind. But I have no fear of thunder. You cannot fear your own right hand. There is strength within our real names, so you will call me by my real name, Stormy Weather. There is power, stormy weather. There is peace. It's not hard to love you. Except when you make it really hard to love you. Loving you is like the first half of The Sound of Music. There's a lot of singing and homemade clothes, but eventually we're both gonna lose our virginities to the Nazi mailman, which isn't really what I had in mind. But you can't always get what you want, and with you, I don't often get what I want, but between the two of us, we get a lot done. We're very productive. I work, and you watch Netflix, which is an important thing to do, because if you weren't watching Netflix, Netflix would go unwatched. And the employees of Netflix would have to work overtime on new ad campaigns, which wouldn't hit the right demographic. And the managers would fire the employees, and the executives would fire the managers, and the board would outvote the executives, and the company would fail, and Blockbuster would come back. And we'd all have to rent our movies at Blockbuster again. And our kids wouldn't have any idea what to do, because they've never lived in a world without Netflix. And the employees and managers and executives of Netflix would all be out of work, and they'd get really depressed, and they'd get into drugs. They'd get into gateway drugs, and then they'd start doing bath salts, and they'd chew each other's faces off, and it would be exactly like 28 Days Later, which is a movie that I had to rent at Blockbuster because you made Netflix fail. How could you? You had one thing to do, and because of you, I have Blockbuster late fees. But you're not all bad. You have a lot of good qualities. I've never seen a heart that big before. It's just that sometimes loving you is like listening to Randy Bachman on CBC. This is only for the Canadians in the audience. I apologize. You know you're going to be disappointed, but you can't leave because your dad's really into it. And my dad says all you really need is someone to free you from the potato jar. That's not a metaphor. I make a lot of mashed potatoes, and I get my hands stuck in jars way too often. Loving you is like a potato jar. It's cold and slimy, but if you can get in there, it's filled with potatoes like you. You're filled with potatoes, and both you and potatoes are delicious. Someone once asked me if I prefer sex or potatoes, and I haven't been able to get back to them on that yet. I don't mean our sex life is bad, it's just that sometimes loving you is like traveling the Oregon Trail. Everybody's getting dysentery. And there's a lot of uneaten meat. Take of that what you will. But over the course of our journey, I've loved you and I've hated you too. But mainly it's balanced out, and despite what you think when you're feeling really blue, I'm not only with you because you can rap every line to Marky Mark's Good Vibrations. I'm with you in spite of the fact that you can rap every line to Marky Mark's Good Vibrations. Marky Mark is a fucking racist. He blinded a guy, and loving you is the exact opposite of blinding a guy. Loving you is like growing new eyes. It feels really weird. And I get my headaches all the time, and so far I can't focus on anything but your nose, but I knows that soon I'll be back to 2020, and the world you've laid out for me will expand in infinite waves. It's not easy to love you, except that sometimes you make it so easy to love you. People will tell you that they ran before they could walk, that they tripped over their own feet to get out the door, that they just couldn't wait to see the world. And people will tell you that they woke up like this, that they grew strong and tall, with straight spines and quick minds, that they were born ready and are natural blondes and don't miss their lost friends and ex-lovers and moms. And people will tell you that they couldn't be happier, that they have no regrets, that they're over the moon, and that soon they're adopting rescues and moving to Williamsburg and learning to write Elvish runes, because they're not going to tell you. They're still looking for home. And it's home. Like Robert Service wrote home, every lonesome thought and desperate want fused into a heart. It's the tears you hid, and moans you stifled, and boredom you just couldn't take. It's the stinging in your toes after hours on frozen lakes. It's making up dead relatives to get your sister out of calculus. And that fight with your big brother where he slammed your fingers in the door of the family's sky blue K car, and you had to get 3 stitches, but he felt so bad about it he bought you popsicles every day for 2 weeks, so really, it was pretty great. It's home. And I don't live here anymore. Can't get much further into that, but as an expat looking back, it's home that my heart lacks. I live out of cardboard boxes now. They stopped being romantic lifetimes ago. Nothing is certain. When you have winter coats on 2 continents, I've left pieces of myself all over this world. Scattered like milkweed, there are lovers in Toronto. San Francisco's got my bike. Paris has my backbone, but I give my eyes for the feeling of home. I don't know why I run, or if I'm ever going to stop. People will tell you that they ran before they learned to walk, but I wish they had told me what wanderlust does to your soul. It's lonely. So lonely to really live out of your backpack. I used to hate it here. Couldn't wait to get out. Ghost town, haunted Canadian lake, home where I was born and home where my mother died, but the geography doesn't matter. I miss long black hair and fry bread batter. Paul Simon missed Long Island, like Cleveland missed LeBron, because once you know what home is, each night spent without cuts like razor wire through a beach, and we weren't made for that knife. And people say that a home is just a place for your stuff, but I believe home is someone who knows where you are. We all want to go home, whether we have families who look to the east, or friends who watch the harbor, or tabletop cacti and belligerent cats. We all want to have a somewhere that wants us just as hard, so let's go home. To where the teacups know our names. I once traced latitudes in my arteries and highways in my veins, and people will tell you that they ran before they learned to walk. It's all talk. It might feel right to wander and ramble and roam, but you'll be running forever if you never find home. Thank you.
So next we have Arnie Reisman. Oh, I said it wrong.
Yeah, it's okay, everybody does.
Arnie Reisman. Looks like Reisman, you spell it. You say it Reisman. Arnie Reisman lives on the island of Martha's Vineyard with his wife, former television consumer reporter and executive coach, Paula Lyons. She's right here. He began his career in journalism, serving as a film and theater critic, as well as executive editor of Boston After Dark, a news weekly. In October 2014, he was named Martha's Vineyard Poet Laureate. His first book of poems, Clarabeau Died for Our Sins, was published by Somerset Press in 2015, as was his second book, Sodom and Costello, in 2016. There's a hint in there, I think. Arnie is also a columnist for the Weekly Vineyard Gazette, a playwright, a filmmaker, and a radio performer. Since the radio program's debut in 1996, along with his wife, he has been a regular panelist on the weekly NPR comedy quiz show, Says You. Among his film credits are Hollywood on Trial, The Other Side of the Moon, and The Powder and the Glory. Please welcome Arnie Reisman.
You've just blown me out of the room. I'm just so impressed. Unfortunately, I've reached an age where the only thing I retain is water. And unfortunately, not long enough. Let's see if I can get through this. All right, I'm going to read a few poems from the first book, Clairvaux Died for Our Sins, and then we'll move along. This one's called As If Souls Are Costumes. Nobody was ever just a nobody in a previous life. Everybody was a king, a queen, a conqueror, a concubine. Never a baker, a barber, a butterfly, never a livery driver, a Red Cross worker, a bottlenose dolphin. As if souls are costumes. As in, you used to be somebody, but now you're just passing through, and since your inner salesman once not only cut the Gordian knot, but also tied it, attention must be paid. As if spirits hang in the backs of closets. Driven by the fear of insignificance, you walk around a past you never had, hide inside a museum made of air, miss the meaning of significance, the meaning of life in the moment. You don't have to be St. Francis to talk to the sparrows. You don't have to be Joan of Arc to hear heavenly orchestras. You don't have to be Shakespeare to know the world can be rotten, full of accidental judgments, casual slaughters. This is the time on earth, smell the sun, reap the wind, investigate love, pet a dog, search the wonderment in his eyes. You may see me looking right back at you. Jumping into something completely different. After Arab Spring, remember that? It seemed to last about as long as a bar of soap. It's one thought I had, and so I wrote this. It's not very long. It's called A Cold Shower. Arab Spring, rub it on. Whip it into a lather. Cleanse all parts of the body politic. But as the soap seeps, be mindful, not restful. And if you experience an insurrection lasting longer than 4 hours, consult your horoscope. The fault is not in the stars. From washes to washes, dust to dust. Remember, Arab summer is fastly approaching. And in no time, you'll be back on a camel, crossing burning sands of yesteryear, nomadically, automatically, arriving at the next oasis in time for the next mirage. Thanks. This one came out of, I'm sure we've all been here, where all of a sudden you sit down at the computer, you go online, and you follow a little link, and that goes someplace else, you follow that one, and that goes someplace else, and pretty soon it's an hour later, you have no idea why you're there anymore. It's called Full Circle. But you learn something along the way. Homer's Odyssey, Aesop's Fables, Plato's Republic, Aristotle's Metaphysics, Herodotus' his Histories, Aeschylus's Tragedies. What do they all have in common? They were all written by men who had only one name. At a time, apparently, when few names were ever repeated. A tradition that expedited taking school attendance and calling children home for supper, a tradition that could not last for long. In ancient Greece, they retired names like old sports jersey numbers. But they didn't hoist them into the rafters or drape them on scoreboards. They just became footnotes of seminal works and strange fatalities. Family modifiers were added when the pickings got slim. As the population exploded, so did the custom. We need extra names. We're running out of letters, observed Zizix, the younger elder, thrice removed. The ancient Greeks never fully developed. Even in their art, they appear flat. androgynous men and women wearing tunics and fish masks. They were always looking one way or the other, but never right at you. One-eyed profiles resembling ancient Egyptians in inadequate battle dress. Fixed stares gave way to unhinged humanity. Greek customs made way for the Romans with their full frontal personalities. They added another dimension, more identity, more fluidity. In their art, they appeared candid, world-weary, lived in. Fish masks gave way to interpretive glances. Granted, the Greeks gave us democracy, but the Romans thought better of themselves and gave us corruption. They customized customs, adopting more than one name, introducing nicknames. Lucius Mestrius Plutarchus became known as Plutarch. Marcus Tullius Cicero was called by his last name. Publius Virgilius Maro was just Virgil to his friends. Then the Romans let lead into their lives, and it took their lives away. They ate from it, they drank from it, they breathed it until it took their breath away, their naming rights and their empire. We waited nearly 1,000 years for the birth of the surname. Those of the royal persuasion extended theirs with attributes. William the Conqueror, Peter the Great, Ivan the Terrible, Ethelred the Unready, Charles the Bold, Charles the Fat, Vlad the Impaler, Cialis the Erect. Among the most common among us, we differentiated with professions, eventually morphing into surnames for the ages. John the Carpenter, Joseph the Plumber, Josephine the Baker, Ben the Cartwright, Jimmy the Carter, Elizabeth the Tailor, Jackie the Mason, Eddie the Fisher, Willie the Shoemaker. Okay. Soon, we adapted colors, vegetation, topography, building materials. I'm surfing the web, mindlessly researching. Sat down here to look up something long forgotten. Cruising with bemusement as I hypertext my way toward lunch. Pandora underscores my activity with a soundtrack of pop tunes. Songs sung by Cher, Madonna, Adele, Pink, Lorde, Jewel, and of course, Enya. This was written way before the last election. It's called Seeing Red, Feeling Blue. Welcome to the United States. Some assembly may be required. They say there are 2 big parties here, but is anyone having a good time? In the land of rednecks and blue noses, you've got your red states, you've got your blue states, but a half dozen purple states decide who sits in the White House. Some see red, while others feel blue. Each time their economy goes into the red, the people choose leaders from out of the blue. In red states, everything is black and white. In blue states, all is gray. Real red anger versus blue sadness. Rage against despair. On your right is a one-way sign. On your left is the horse you came in on. You are now leaving a bipolar nation.
Cecilia Wallach is the author of 6 acclaimed collections of poems. In addition to essays, reviews, flash fiction, autobiographical prose, memoir, and a novel. Her work has been translated and published in Germany, France, Poland, and Ukraine. Cecilia has collaborated with visual artists, choreographers, composers, and filmmakers. A novella, Sur la route, was published in 2015. She is the recipient of a 2011 National Endowment in the Arts Fellowship and fellowships from the California Arts Council, CEC/ArtsLink International, and others. Based in Los Angeles, Cecilia travels the globe with gusto. Please welcome Cecilia Wallach.
Tangible sweetness. Oh God, she's beautiful. It's New Year's Eve, the dress is pink, she's 21 years old. She hasn't seen me yet. She may not even know I'll come. A sour daughter, sickly, difficult, begging her to save the dress. And here I am, gone past it, already older than she was the night she wore it, and right there in her body, crying with her on the steps. What's terrible is I know why she's crying, and I can't explain it either. On the periphery, my father smokes a cigarette, laughs, worries. Through space and time, we touch in this thin moment, make a pact to break jaggedly in three, to live by chance. There's even music, and it's music I will love. An orchestra in black and white, a dance that haunts my body. Mother, for the pink dress, for each thing that never was. Father, a toast. Gather that woman in your arms. Begin my life. It's 1956. This is a waltz.
Oh.
You don't have to clap after every poem because some of them are short. My parents' favorite song was the Tennessee Waltz, which is actually kind of about betrayal. And this poem goes back in time even earlier to before my parents met. I know everyone in this room knows what was happening in the United States around 1949. Beth is shaking her head. So in 1949, my father was in prison in Virginia. And unbeknownst to him, while he was in prison, his mother was murdered. I don't know what that has to do about this poem, except that my father died and was resurrected. But in that moment he died, he saw his mother coming toward him. And the poem began with a photograph that was in our family album for a long time, and I always liked the photograph. And I always would ask my mother where it was taken, and she said, well, that's a picture of your father on that farm. Okay. I didn't know what that farm was. A photograph of my father circa 1949. Behind him, the window is open. Shadows cross in the grass beneath the chair he is tipping back. One is my father's. The man in the photograph leaning away from the too bright sun. He is dressed in white, his legs stretched out, his feet in their heavy black shoes propped up. But why is he smiling? This is the prison farm. He is young. They have sent him to work, and so recklessly handsome I can't help loving him already. Before I am born. And who is he smiling toward in the distance? Whose shadow slants into the frame, crossing his? My father's dark hair is combed to one side. His hands are folded in his lap. He could sit like this for the next 40 years, but he won't. The man in the picture is going to stand up and learn to type, and read hundreds of books, and make airplanes fly, and marry a woman he sees on the south side of Pittsburgh and offers a ride in his car. She will bear him 5 daughters and 2 sons. One of those children will stare at this photograph for years without ever knowing what place it is, or the name of the other man holding the camera. A prison doctor who'd saved her father after he broke from the quarry gang, ran past guards jeering, "Rusky, commie, buckshot like hot sleet tearing his skin, and the warden who hissed, "Go ahead, bastard, die," until he went as far as the bright edge of it, then heard the doctor's voice whispering over him, "Don't go, don't leave us yet." And she'll want to lure him back herself. The man in this photograph, sharp-featured, young, who is not her father yet, who has been resurrected already once and brought by the doctor whose name will be lost under his wing to the prison farm. She will want to beg him never to die, to stay in that chair tipped above the crossed shadows, just leaning back with the window behind him, staring out restlessly at the world. But I can't stop him. This is America, prison or not, and he wants me to live. I'll take that applause for my dad. I don't want it for myself, but I'll take it for Dad. This next poem is a Pantoum. Some of you have heard before. Some of you may know it by heart because I read it so often. I spent the wonder years of my life, my adolescent years, in rural Kentucky, in a kind of poor community, but we had horses and ponies. If you didn't have your own, you could borrow the neighbors. If you didn't have a saddle, you could ride bareback. So the Pantoum is a form that came from Malaysian fishing songs, uses a pattern of repetition. You'll hear every line twice. And it's for my sister Mary. And the only background I think you need to know, and I hope it's clear in the poem, but in case it's not, is that we were living out in the country. Someone was building a house nearby. They made a bonfire of scrap lumber and left the fire burning, and it was catching the trees on fire. And there was a worry that it might catch, it might spread. And so being really good kids, my sister and I and two local boys named Tony and Boo, we rode bareback through the woods all night to make sure that nothing else caught fire. Bareback Pantoum. Bareback and young, we rode through the woods, and the woods were on fire. 2 borrowed horses, 2 local boys whose waists we clung to, my sister and I, and the woods were on fire. The pounding of hooves, the smell of smoke, and the sharp sweat of boys whose waists we clung to, my sister and I, as we rode toward flame with the sky in our mouths. The pounding of hooves, the smell of smoke, and the sharp sweat of boys, and the heart saying, "Mine," as we rode toward flame with the sky in our mouths, the trees turning gold, then crimson, white, and the heart saying, "Mine," of the wild, bright world. The trees turning gold, then crimson, white, as they burned in the darkness, and we were girls of the wild, bright world, of the woods near our house. We could turn, see the lights as they burned in the darkness, and we were girls, so we rode just to ride through the woods near our house. We could turn, see the lights, and the horses would carry us home. So we rode just to ride, my sister and I, just to be close to that danger, desire. And the horses would carry us home. 2 borrowed horses, 2 local boys, my sister and I, just to be close to that danger, desire. One night, bareback and young, we rode through the woods. This is another love poem based on an old form. The form is a blason, and it was first used by the troubadours in Provence. And you would write a list of praises of different parts of your beloved's body. And what I did was I decided to write a list of promises of things I would do for some beloved. And it's called just Blason. For you, I'd stick the little pins of joy in all my arms, stitch my eyelids shut with stars, kiss the darkness from the dark. For you, I'd lean on wind and let hot sky lick up my dress, my thighs a cloud through which to plunge, my hands 2 prisons for your hands. For you, I'd pull the carnival of ribbons from my heart, commit the birdish sin of song, float down the river of your tongue. For you, I'd drown the wine with more wine, ruby up my hair, drag strings of fish along my waist, sigh like a heap of broken glass. For you, I'd keep each angel in its cage of light. For you. I think I'm going to go ahead and read a poem about sex. Seems to be leading up to that. And because Arnie's wife seems to be enjoying it. And this is actually another poem. It's my love poem to my parents. And this is a poem that was kind of in my head wanting to be written for many, many years. And I finally just decided to try to write a list of things that had to do with why I believed as a child that people had sex in bathrooms. Made perfect sense to me. Made perfect sense to me. I was having a conversation with a local friend here last night, and we were talking about how parents in our generation, she's my age, they didn't tell kids, you didn't get sex education. And my mother said, it's like, well, people told us you should have sex education, but they didn't tell us what to tell you. And so they kind of told us nothing. But my friend said last night, yeah, one of her sisters was pregnant and playing with the 3-year-old on the floor. And the 3-year-old knew, Mom was. And all of a sudden the 3-year-old looked at Mom and said, open your mouth, I want to see how you ate that baby. Isn't that great? It's like, wow. Makes perfect sense. So that's about as much as I knew. So this is for my parents, and the only thing you need to know is that my parents had 7 kids, and they probably would have had more, except the grandkids started coming. Why I believed as a child that people had sex in bathrooms. Because they loved one another, I guessed. Because they had 7 kids and there wasn't a door in that house that was ever locked, except for the bathroom door. That door with the devil's face, 2 horns like flame, flaring up in the grain of the wood. Or did we only imagine that shape? Which meant the devil could watch you pee. The devil could see you naked. Because that's where people took off their clothes. And you had to undress for sex, I'd heard. Whatever sex was, lots of kissing and other stuff I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Because at night when I was scared, I just climbed into my parents' bed. Sometimes other kids were there too. And we slept in a tangle of sheets and bodies, breath, a full ashtray on the nightstand, our father's work clothes hung over a chair, our mother's damp cotton nightgown twisted around her legs. Because when I heard babies were made from sex, and sex was something that happened in bed, I thought, no, the babies are already there, in the bed. And more babies came. because the only door that was ever locked was the bathroom door. Those two inside in the steam of his bath, her hairsprays mist, because sometimes I knocked and was let in, and my father lay in the tub, his whole dark body underwater like some beautiful statue I'd seen. And my mother stood at the mirror fixing her hair, or she'd put down the lid of the toilet and perch there talking to him. Because maybe this was their refuge from us, though they never tried to keep us away. Because my mother told me once that every time they came home from the hospital with a brand new baby, they laughed and fell in love all over again and couldn't wait to start making more. Should this have confused me? It did not, because I saw how he kissed the back of her neck and pulled her giggling into his lap. How she tucked her chin and looked up at him through her eyelashes, smiling, sly. So I reasoned whatever sex they had in the bathroom. Those steamy hours when we heard them singing to one another, then whispering, and the door stayed locked. Because I can still picture them languid there, and beautiful and young, though I had no idea how young they were. My mother soaping my father's back, her dark hair slipping out of its pins. Because what was sex after that? I didn't know he would ever die, this God in a body, strong as God, or that she would one day hang her head over the bathroom sink to weep. I was a child, only one of their children. Love was clean. Babies came from singing. The devil was wood and had no eyes. My dad's name was Harry and my mom's name was Laverne. They were 7 years apart in age and they died 7 years apart. I like to think they're somewhere together. After my mom died, I couldn't call her Laverne, I couldn't call her mom. She would only answer to her middle name, which was Pearl. My mother's was christened Laverne Pearl Wisniewski. She thought her name was ridiculous, but she had a great uncle she said was a great lush, and he thought that name sounded French. So that's how she got their name. This poem is not too long. It's a Villanelle. This is a form, and it kind of comes back around because the Villanelle is a form that was based on a dance. It originated as a dance. And it's kind of waltzy to me. It's a poem that's kind of like a waltz, and it's got a pattern of repeating lines. Harry and Pearl, a Villanelle. My father wears shoes in the afterworld, the shiny brown dress shoes we buried him in. My mother goes barefoot and answers to Pearl, though that wasn't her name. Daddy called her Girl and told us, your mother works hard, be good kids. Now Daddy wears shoes in the afterworld because he lay shoeless his last years, lay curled like a child in his bed, crying out, or he'd sing, and our mother went barefoot and answered him. Pearl was her middle name, given her slurred at birth, a drunken granduncle's grandiose gift. But our father wears shoes in the afterworld, and our mother, who followed him, ever his jewel, to wherever they've gone, in her last white dress, goes barefoot beside him now, answers to Pearl, won't answer to mother, and won't be implored. She cooked and she cleaned and she sang, that's enough. Now my father wears shoes in the afterworld, shiny brown dress shoes, and gives her a twirl in his arms. She's his girl again, laughs. My mother who's barefoot and answers to Pearl when I call to her, call to my sweet disappeared mother and father who slipped through my breath. My father wears shoes in the afterworld. My mother goes barefoot and answers to Pearl.
I feel like this room is on fire and our heads are all going to fly off. So, thank you all so much. Winona, Cecilia, Arnie, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And we look forward to seeing you all on Thursday, March 23rd, right back in this room. Thank you so much.